everyone, this is Keith Scott from Apple City, Australia. I'm one of the voices of Blue Energy Loose. It's time to watch Relentless and Unstoppable. And so give it up for your main hosts, Douglas Kenney and Andy McPhee.
Who's the most joyful person I've ever met? Oh, I know one definitely. By far, the most joyful person that I've ever met is definitely Brandon Riggs. Brandon Riggs is an autistic foundation owner, younger than me actually, based in Phoenix. And I met Brandon Riggs at the Arizona Boardwalk, and he was promoting his foundation, My Special World, which involves dancing and limousine driving and moving. And so yeah, Brandon was by far one of the best people I've met on the autism spectrum, and Brandon was great. And he is by far one of the most polite and most humblest and one of the most excited people that I've ever met in my life. The most joyful, definitely. And so, everybody, I strongly suggest you go to My Special World and donate to Brandon Riggs because I really like him. He's a great young gentleman, and I'm really hoping I can see him again soon. And I'm hoping to have him on RNU. I've been trying to get him on for a while, but by far, Brandon Riggs is one of the most nicest people I've ever met. So, great guy, and support his foundation. So, what's been the best moment of my life so far? By far going to England and Scotland because, in a lot of ways it felt like something was overdue, me traveling internationally and it was 2 weeks out in the British Isles, seeing all the history, seeing Wallace Monument and, seeing the area where Braveheart was portrayed as having taken place and, seeing Big Ben and hearing it chime and, seeing Buckingham Palace, and also, just the fun, it was a lot of fun trying new foods and seeing the North Sea and, being across Norway from a very far distance. And so, yeah, it was by far a good moment. And very importantly, it taught me a lot about what respect is like in England, and Scotland, which is really good. So, by far the best moment of my life was traveling to England and Scotland and having a great, tremendous experience. So, yeah. Do I believe in second chances? Yes, I definitely do. But come to think of it, though, who wouldn't believe in second chances? Well, unless you're angry with someone, but the beauty of having second chances is it gives you a chance to rehabilitate yourself and all that. So, God gave me a second chance through Andy McPhee when my life was going downhill and my parents divorced, and so there was no way that my parents were going to last as a couple any further than they did. And so, but that's between them though. As far as me, God used the divorce and used Andy McPhee to give me a second chance when I was getting into that trouble and descending into addiction. And by far that was a really part of my life that I'm very grateful for from the Lord. And God also gave me a second chance further when I had a very rough year in 2022 when I was battling bipolar type 2 symptoms and was going in and out of hospitals and psych wards for a while. In a lot of ways, I was given a second chance that year, especially with TMS treatment and everything, so getting that second chance, was really good. It proved beneficial and I'm very relieved and very glad that I don't have to be in the hospital for the rest of my life. So, or go in and out of it forever. So that's a relief. And I ended up going on to moving out of my mom's house and I went on to, get a job at Jersey Mike's Subs, which was really good. So, God's decision to give me a second chance was very vindicated and when it was all said and done. So, yeah. What's something the person across from you doesn't know about you? Well, here's one, and I'm just going to say this for everybody on behalf of everybody that knows I'm from Colorado. One thing that people don't know about me is despite having lived in Colorado for 14 years, and this is going to shock people, I've never been to Colorado Springs ever in my life. Most of the area that I was concentrated in Colorado was northeastern. Estes Park was within driving distance of the Wyoming border, but it was in the Rocky Mountains, and other than Estes Park, my primary focus of travel just driving around the state in general was Grand Lake and Granby area. And then other than that, it was Denver and Loveland and Fort Collins and Fort Morgan, Greeley, and up towards Sterling near the Nebraska border. And other than that, I didn't really go any farther south than Denver, Colorado, and then the only other times that I was in other parts of Colorado was when me and my family took the train to Glenwood Springs, but that required going through the Rocky Mountains towards the west, and we ended up going through a 6 mile long Moffat Tunnel, and other than that, it was just Glenwood Springs, and then also I went to Grand Junction a handful of times, but other than that, I've never been to anywhere else in Colorado, not even Northwest. I've not been to East Colorado other than Sterling, and so as a result, I've never been to Colorado Springs in my life, and that's going to baffle people because Colorado Springs is one of the, you know, one of the biggest cities in Colorado and a site that a lot of people want to see, but I've never been there. I came close to going there in 2012 when my family and I took our U-Haul and lifted ourselves to Arizona when we moved, but unfortunately a road was closed and so we had to take a detour through some mountains to go south. And so we ended up missing out by like 10 minutes of entering Colorado Springs, but the bottom line, though, is I never went there, and I've never been to Florence or anywhere down south either. We just drove through the south part of it on a detour, but that's pretty much it, though. So that's a factoid that people don't know about me, is I've never been to anywhere in Colorado other than where I've described, and I never have set foot in Colorado Springs. So that's going to surprise some people, but it's a fact. So, yeah.
Gee, that's all we have for Relentless and Unstoppable. So tune into the next episode to hear more amazing stories from amazing guests. This is Keith Scott from Sydney, Australia saying so long, and I'm smarter than the average bear. Gee.